Hello and welcome to Burning Issues, the only program that provides you a glimpse inside the Wichita Fire Department. I'm Fire Marshal Brad Crisp, and in this episode we'll talk about winter fire safety tips and the importance of preparing for winter driving. It is the time of year when utility bills soar due to falling temperatures, and the area residents are constantly searching for ways to remain warm and remain economical. This can become a dangerous scenario for residents and firefighters annually, as fires of catastrophic proportions wreak havoc on the residents of the city. Careless use of heating appliances accounted for nearly 53,000 fires nationwide, down from nearly 59,000 fires according to the NFPA. These fires have also contributed to 400 civilian fire deaths nationwide, and Wichita certainly has not been immune to that statistic. Also, the winter driving season is upon us. Are you prepared? During this time period, the Wichita Fire Department's call volume increases from stranded drivers to vehicle collisions. Mother Nature's effect, coupled with poor driving conditions, often strain the emergency response system. Are you prepared for the elements of the cold? Oftentimes, many of our citizens are unprepared to deal with an emergency in cold temperatures. It is important for everyone to understand the effects of cold. Accidents can happen anywhere and have potentially deadly consequences. I'd like to welcome Lieutenant Casey Hauschild to the Burning Issues show. Casey is an 8-year veteran of the Wichita Fire Department, currently assigned to Station 14 on the northeast side of town. Casey, welcome to the program. Can you share with our audience a little bit about who you are and what you've done up to this point in your career?
Sure. Serving as lieutenant, Firehouse 14 on the northeast side. I've spent a lot of my career on the northeast side. Very familiar. Been fortunate to spend a couple years downtown.
Sure.
Serving the core area.
Which station downtown?
Firehouse 1.
Okay, that's up on North Main.
Correct.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time on what was the truck company, the ladder company, serving functions to support our crews on the interior of a fire.
Right. The truck company function, for those that don't know, those are the trucks that have the ladders on top. And of course, we deploy folks up onto roofs and to provide ventilation and keep things safer inside the structure.
Right, keep the smoke and heat off the residents and the fire crews.
Right. So then you found yourself promoted to lieutenant, and now you're assigned to Station 14.
Yeah, I'd actually served a year and a half as a fireman there, so coming back home was kind of nice.
Well, one of the other things that you do is you provide some information in the form of a newsletter to some of the citizens here in Wichita. And so I want to talk a little bit about your work with those newsletters and specifically as they pertain to winter fire safety. So let's talk a little bit about some of the common things that people can do when the cold months are here and it's snowy and it's icy. What can they do to keep themselves and their families and their property safe?
Well, first of all, you look at winter heating appliances, whether they be a utility or something that plugs into a wall, or even people use ovens.
Right.
Strongly advise people not to use your oven, whether it be gas or electric.
Right.
You happen to leave a pizza box on top of the stovetop, anything comes in contact, or even small children playing with those appliances can start fires or harm themselves.
Right.
Also, you have to look at carbon monoxide related incidents.
True.
Whether it be your furnace or the oven, if you notice that you begin to have a headache or you're fatigued or anybody in your household just seems a little off,
right,
you need to have something checked. Either call us to come evaluate for carbon monoxide, and we'll probably bring in Kansas Gas as a utility to assist.
Right. So you had mentioned appliances, and there's more than just the stove and the furnace. Oftentimes when we're talking about appliances, we're talking about space heaters and those kinds of things that come out during the winter months. Talk a little bit about space heaters. What can people do to keep their family and their homes safe from a fire involving a space heater? Space
heaters, usually when we see problems with those, either articles of clothing are too close, blankets, chairs,
bedding,
anything that's going to be a victim of radiant heat.
Right.
Over time, those will eventually deteriorate due to that heating, and they'll start a fire themselves.
Right.
Also, people leave their home and leave these utilities on because they don't want to come home to a cold house. Nobody really does.
Right.
But the problem with that is if you have pets or something shifts in the home and knocks it over, your carpet, bedding, those materials, again, you're going to cause a fire.
Right. You know, the rule of thumb with any kind of appliance or any kind of open flame device is don't leave it unattended. And you bring up a great point. Space heaters are very helpful, but if over time they're used excessively, they can break down as well. I mean, they're not made to last forever.
Right.
Keeping them away from things that will get heat or will eventually lead to an ignition is extremely important, which would bring me to my second point, something else that we experience a lot of, and that's fires in fireplaces. I know that sounds kind of silly, right, because that's where a fire is designed to be ignited, but oftentimes it gets out of the fireplace. Can you talk a little bit about that?
A little bit of fire is great, but a lot of fire is better.
Yeah.
So people
More is always better, right?
Always better. So people go to start building their fire, they're not experiencing warmth right away.
Right.
Some fireplaces have assisted ventilation, meaning they have a fan that blows that radiant heat throughout the structure. If they don't, that's when we commonly see problems.
Right.
The fireplace doors are there for a reason as well, as is the dampener.
Right.
That's going to keep the smoke flowing through the chimney.
Right.
People leave those closed, it builds up, pushes that fire out. If it's in one place, it wants to get to another.
Right.
Also, the biggest problem we have is chimneys. Just like the space heaters, any other appliance, before you use them, they need to be inspected, maintained, and cleaned.
Great point. Because the fire could actually, the heat and the products of combustion in the fire can escape through the flue or even sometimes through the fireplace box if it's not been properly inspected and ignite some of the structural members, the 2x4s and the things that are used to build your home. And that's not where a fire is intended to be.
And those are the fires that we commonly see late notification.
Right.
You don't realize it's burning to the exterior of your home or up above you in the attic.
Right.
That's when we get late stage large fires.
Right. Takes the roof off of a person's home. And that's really a great segue into the next common kind of fire that's associated with fireplaces, and that's when people remove their ashes. And what do they do with them, Casey?
Right to the trash can.
Yeah.
Whether
Bad
they,
idea.
Right. Whether they sit there over a period of 3 days, you know, they could still have hot coals inside.
Absolutely.
And once they have those hot coals, it's a great ignition point.
Yeah.
There could be chemicals in the trash can, just the plastic, again, radiant heating.
Yeah. We've documented fires that have occurred 3 days after a fireplace has been extinguished because they took their ashes, they put them in their dumpster, which is up against the side of the house. It burns right up the siding, into the soffit, and then the roof's gone.
And siding's a great accelerant in itself.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, we really need people to be very careful with how they handle ashes. And it's not just from a fireplace. It could be from a barbecue grill or from a smoker. It's the same thing. They're ashes, and they stay hot for an extended period of time. You'd mentioned carbon monoxide, and that's something that we typically associate with gas-fueled appliances. An oven, a furnace, certainly can be a fireplace as well. It's very important to have carbon monoxide detectors in your home in the event that there's carbon monoxide buildup and you start getting those headaches or feeling fatigued, and have that early warning system. As far as placing a carbon monoxide detector in a home, do you have some ideas for folks that are watching where they could look for one?
I would go by the manufacturer's recommendations if you purchase one. Some detectors may be different than, there's plug-in wall types, there's wall mounted just like a smoke detector you'd have in your home.
Exactly.
Just read the manufacturer instructions and abide by them.
Right.
Every 7 to 10 years, they should be replaced. And if you have one that's going off, don't hesitate to call 911.
Absolutely.
Have us come out, inspect it. It could be a false alarm,
Right.
but that peace of mind is more important than suffering a casualty because you didn't have us come out.
That's a great point. Anytime a smoke alarm or a carbon monoxide alarm, either one goes off, go ahead and err on the side of safety and call 911. Let us come out and check it out, give you the peace of mind, and in the event that there is something wrong going on, then that gives us an opportunity to stop it while it's still really small and to preserve your property.
Right. By the time you experience those headaches, the fatigue, those are late stage signs.
Yeah.
And once that starts occurring, you can have a significant medical condition that's going to take an extended hospital stay to fix.
Exactly. Great point. Let's shift gears just a little bit. We've been talking about some fire safety tips, but in the wintertime, things like ice storms and snowstorms, and sometimes even though it's not frozen precipitation in the form of rain, it still kind of causes some havoc when it comes to driving and being prepared for those kinds of things. So let's talk a little bit about driving in inclement weather. What are some things that people can do to get from point A to point B in a safe, effective, efficient way?
I think the primary thing people can do is take consideration that there's all skill levels of drivers operating on the streets with you.
Yeah.
So it could be somebody's first time driving in winter weather.
Yeah.
Somebody else could feel they're very seasoned and push their vehicle beyond its own capabilities.
Right.
If you know that in advance, you should be prepared. Have yourself blankets in case you yourself go off the roadway. Anything that can keep you fed over the course of a day or two. We don't commonly have huge buffalo-style blizzards.
Right.
But if we were to have a high level of snow and we weren't prepared for that, you may be stuck somewhere for an extended period of time.
Right.
Like you said before, it really puts a heavy tax on all of our equipment and apparatus capabilities and our own system altogether, EMS, fire, police.
Yeah.
So to have things that can prepare to sustain yourself.
Right.
And notification, your cell phone's fully charged, your car's full of gas, things of that nature where you know you can get by on your own.
You know, you brought up a great point just a few moments ago about understanding not only what your vehicle's capable of doing, but understanding your own limitations. I know one of the things that I've done with my own kids is to take them to a nice big open parking lot on that first big snow or that ice event and let them practice driving in a parking lot where they're not going to run into somebody else or they're not going to hit anything, just so that they can learn what their limitations are and what the vehicle can and cannot do. So that's something that I think we would certainly encourage people to do, is to practice and understand their level of skills in their driving. You mentioned some of the things that we would have in a kit to be prepared. Let's talk a little bit more about that, because it's a great idea to have, you know, some food in there and to have a blanket. What are some other things that people can have in a kit in their car that they could take with them if they're traveling out of town or if they're traveling across town, just in case something happens?
You want to have blankets, whether they be home interior blankets, the emergency escape blankets, something that's going to provide shelter and warmth for your body. Once the core temperature starts to drop inside a person, your ability to function at any capacity is going to be limited.
And that can happen quick.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The hypothermic effect is pretty immediate. You don't even realize it, but once it catches up with you, you're in trouble.
Right.
Food intake is going to help with that. Your metabolism, keeping that going. High-calorie foods, the Cliff Bars, things of that nature that can provide some get up and go over an extended period of time. Road flares, notification again, the cell phone, the chargers. Utilize your car battery as well. I've seen people, you want to leave that car running. If it's stranded and stuck, by leaving that car running, you're depleting the battery, you're depleting the gas system, and it may actually cause a fire. If it's built up in the snowpack, it'll cause those components to overheat themselves.
You can also get carbon monoxide poisoning sitting in your car while it's idling, especially if there's not adequate ventilation. Another piece of equipment is a flashlight, and I want to point out, interestingly enough, that these are all items that we ought to have in our home as well.
Absolutely.
We could get that snowstorm or that ice storm where we're stuck in our house for 2 or 3 days or more, and you need to be prepared for power outages, lack of access, lack of being able to go from point A to point B. You may not be able to run down to the Quick Trip or the Walmart to get something that you need. You need to have it at your home, at the ready, in the event that there's a big storm coming. So paying attention to those warning signs from the news outlets and others will help us prepare for those things. As far as traveling goes, if you're going from point A to point B, you had mentioned making sure the gas tank is topped off and ready to fill. It's also important to let people know where you're going. Why don't you talk a little bit about the importance of communicating with our family and friends of where we're at and what we're doing?
Sure, and commonly we start to talk about that, we think of our elderly citizens or maybe the first-time drivers that are going out and venturing on their own. Everybody needs to be prepared. If you go to the store, and commonly it takes you 15 minutes, now it may take you 30 because you're going to kind of double up your time to get there. Somebody should expect you home in 30 minutes. If you're not, there may be a problem. And if you have an additional problem with the cell phone or notification, the quicker we can be notified that we need to come look for you, the better off you're going to be. So that's a huge advantage.
Absolutely. Letting somebody know where you're going and when they expect you to be back, whether it's your parents or your aunt and uncle or your grandma and grandpa or a sibling, somebody needs to know to expect where you're at and where you're going to be coming from on your way back home. On a final note about safety kits, there's some contingencies that could arise that could cause a sudden change of plans or something going on like that. Because preparation's key, people need to understand how to protect their things, how to protect their belongings, how to protect their family, how to protect themselves. Think in advance, be prepared, have a plan, communicate that plan, and that will really help people to keep themselves, their families, their friends, and their property safe. In the event that somebody does experience an emergency, let's talk a little bit again about who should they call? What should they do? If something's going wrong, who do we call?
If you don't know who else to call, obviously call 911.
Right.
What may be an emergency to myself compared to someone else may be entirely different by perception. Mm-hmm. But if you know you're in trouble, don't hesitate to call 911.
Right.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
We'll come help you out, and it's nothing personal. It's what we strive to do every day.
Well, Casey, we certainly appreciate your service to this community, for being a part of the emergency services team. Your dedication to the citizens of Wichita and to the Wichita Fire Department are extremely appreciated, and thanks a lot for joining us today on Burning Issues.
Thanks for having me.
If you'd like to become more involved in the city of Wichita, or if you want to learn more about the Wichita Fire Department, you can go to wichita.gov and click on the Fire Department link. You can check us out on our Facebook page, or you can always call the Fire Department at 268-4441. That concludes this episode of Burning Issues. Our mission is to provide our community excellent, proactive fire and life safety services through prevention, education, and protection. Remember, Wichita firefighters are highly trained professionals who are your friends and neighbors. They're Wichita's bravest, and they're somewhere serving you in many ways every day.